I started Golden Fool about a week ago, little over a week ago. I did not read much that first week, but I've read more over the last few days, so I am up to page 230. But before I go any farther, welcome to the vlog. And be warned, I will be talking about all the spoilers as I go, because that's the fun part. So spoilers for the Golden Fool and all Realm of the Elderlings that come before it, just in case. That warning is there. So I was very ready to get back into this series. I fully enjoyed my recent read of Fool's Errand. I remembered how much I like Robin Hobb, and I was excited to get back into it and continue this trilogy. When I read the first one, Fool's Errand, it seemed very much like a setup book for everything that comes after. The Farseer trilogy ended when Fitz was 20, and this one picks up, this trilogy, the book before this, picks up 15 years later when Fitz is 35. So there's that huge time jump. You know that the Fool was off doing other things in the meantime, and then they're back. And now it feels like we are back into what Fool's Errand was leading up to. And part of that is that Fitz is back at Buckkeep. He's back in the castle. He's back to parts of his old life, but in such a different way. He's back to, again, hiding in the shadows, doing things from the background, back to keeping secrets, back to giving of himself for the Farseer throne. But it's different now. A big difference being his relationship with Chade. I do have notes. I'm going out of order. Chade almost jokingly had told Fitz that because Fitz has access to like the secret hallways that he can spy from, that Fitz can now consider himself a journeyman assassin. Being the assassin is not the part of the job that Fitz wanted, but it's so easy to fall back into that because that's how he lived so much of his life. It's what he's used to, it's what he's trained for, working from the shadows. He hasn't had to assassinate anyone yet. But going a little out of order, because it's what I was reading last night, there's this huge shift now, weirdly, of Chade and Fitz being peers, more than they ever were. They're not master and apprentice anymore, and they're not really master and journeyman. There's a little bit of that left, but they're a lot more working together as two adults for the same goal. And I'm not sure who's more weirded out by that new relationship, whether it's Fitz or Chade. But I got to the part where Chade is drinking these herbs that are supposed to enhance your natural skill ability, and he thinks he probably has it, and he has all these deep down buried feelings from being, like Fitz was, the Farseer bastard, and up until Fitz, no illegitimate child of the Farseer line had been allowed to train in the skill magic. It made them too much of a threat. Chade even said King Shrewd never feared Fitz because Fitz lacked ambition, whereas Chade had so much ambition, King Shrewd feared him and never gave Chade the chance to even be tested, to even see if the magic was within him. Anyway, Chade has always kept track of so much in his brain. Now he has to keep journals, which he hates. He knows he's aging. He knows that he's starting to lose things that he used to just remember flawlessly. And he knows that the skill should be able to heal his body, lengthen his life, and the kingdom needs him so much right now, he's going to do whatever he can to try to bring out whatever latent skill might be there. And he calls Fitz out a little bit saying, I knew you wouldn't want to help me. And he's right. And Fitz doesn't want to, for some reason. I don't really know why. I mean, he's not excited about helping Thick or Prince Dutiful either. And those are a little more understandable why Fitz would be reluctant to help. I'm not sure why he wouldn't want to help Chade. And if that's explained, it's probably just later. But when Chade was like, I think I have the skill, and Fitz doesn't respond, it just felt so like, it felt so relatable. Like if we lived in a world where magic was real and some people had it and some people didn't, wouldn't all of us like secretly desire to discover someday that we had that magic? And Chade is that person living in a world where not just some people can, specifically his family line has this natural talent. He never got to see if he had it, and he wants it so bad. So badly. I think, okay, maybe a little deeper than just extending his life and healing himself so he can serve the throne. It might speak to his self-identity, make him feel more, I hate to use the word valid, partly because I just read Wind and Truth and Sanderson uses the word valid way too often. It might make him feel more like a true farseer to discover that he has the farseer magic. He was an illegitimate child, never able to come out into the open. He was always hidden in the shadows. And it might make him feel more like a real farseer, like he's really part of the royal line instead of just the background assassin who serves the real farseers. Anyway, that's adding a lot of awkwardness and some strain to his relationship with Fitz right now. And speaking of awkwardness, Fitz and Jenna. That whole situation is so awkward. Jenna is really into Fitz. It seems like maybe she could even let herself love him, and if he was more interested, maybe they could make a life together. She seems far more into it than Fitz, who is just in it for the friendship and then the physical part of the relationship. And he feels so guilty. He wanted that the next person he had that with to have love involved. He wants to love the woman he spends his nights with, and even though he doesn't love her, he still goes to her and does it together with her. And then he feels guilty about it because he knows that he will never feel more than friendship for her. He's not going to be able to offer her himself fully. He can't give her a life with him. He's back to his old life of having to keep secrets, and he doesn't want to have that in a relationship anymore. And then Jenna said that really awkward thing about, so that's what it's like for a she-wolf. I've never been with a witted man before. So weird. Why are you saying that, Jenna? Why is that what matters right now? And then we have Fitz actually finally giving skill lessons to Prince Dutiful. And then that whole weird thing about how Fitz is related to him. If the truth were that Dutiful was Verity's biological child, then Dutiful and Fitz would be first cousins. But Dutiful doesn't even know that Tom Badgerlock is Fitz Chivalry Farseer. And if he did, I believe no one except the Fool even knows like how that whole thing went down where Verity took over Fitz's body, and so Fitz is the biological father of Dutiful. It's all just really weird, mixed up. Sometimes I forget who knows what. And it's really interesting seeing how Robin Hobb decided to handle what gets passed down through family lines. Dutiful is obviously... Okay, wait. No, before that. Before even talking about skill, something that's standing out to me about Dutiful is his loneliness, his lack of a true friend and people that he feels like care about him as a person. There's this thing called reactive attachment disorder. It's a trauma response where someone unhealthily gets way too attached to a person really early, more than is healthy, and it feels kind of like that's what's happening with Dutiful. Just the way Fitz described how Dutiful is latching onto any person who offers even the smallest thread of anything that even looks like friendship. The way he has latched on so hard to Civil and to Fitz just seems like all of a sudden, here's a person who might care about me as a person instead of me as the prince. We are now friends. Also, Dutiful never had any kind of father figure at all. Whereas Fitz at least had Hap. And so when Fitz drops a comment about his boy, Dutiful's like, what boy? What are you talking about? And Dutiful's very jealous that Fitz has another boy in his life. Fitz has had the opportunity to at least a little bit be a father. Not to his own biological children, but to someone who needed him. But Dutiful has never had that from the other side. He's never had the father figure ever. And he latched on so hard to Fitz. And it's interesting to see how strong in the skill Dutiful is. Not surprising. And he has no, like, emotional baggage that Fitz has, like, from the way that Galen, one of the worst characters, one of my most hated characters ever, the way Galen taught the skill did so much damage to Fitz that Dutiful doesn't have. Dutiful just swings wide his mental gates. A lot of natural talent, and I can relate here to Fitz a little bit. Teaching someone younger than himself who has this well of natural talent in something that he himself has. I have been a music teacher for a very long time, and sometimes I get that student who is just so freaking talented, and sometimes it feels awkward, like, you're more talented than me, and I'm supposed to teach you? Now, talent does not make up for knowledge and experience, and actually working your way up from the bottom and practicing things in order and whatever. Fitz has stuff to teach, but he looks at Dutiful and it's like, where did this even come from? Did this even come from me? And then when it comes to natural skill ability, Fitz has another biological child, Nettle, who has not really come into the story yet. She is like skilling to him at night, sometimes on purpose, sometimes it's just that skill connection while they're dreaming. She has to come into the story at some point. Whether it's this one or the book after, I don't know. Things are going to come to a head. She's going to figure out that she's skilling a real person, whether it's her father or not, I don't know. Or something bad is going to happen, and Fitz is going to have to teach Nettle to keep her safe, so she doesn't just lose herself in the skill flow or river or whatever it's called. It's something I was thinking about in the way that magic works here. So you have these different types of magic, and the skill and the wit are usually two separate types of magic. And Fitz, being a farseer and partly descended from the mountain people who seem to have some ability in the wit magic, has both. And so does Prince Dutiful. And for some reason, Fitz is very adamant about separating the two magics. And when he teaches Dutiful, he wants to teach the skill and the wit separately. I feel like it's a weird thing to want to do. And I feel like maybe also that's coming from a place of anyone who ever taught him the skill only had skill magic, and anyone who taught him about the wit only had wit magic, and his wit and skill teachers wanted them to be separate, but Fitz has both within his same person. He is a magic user that has the two, and they can work together. And I feel like, being someone who has read a lot of fantasy, why not take advantage of having two magics? Why not work harder to combine them into something even stronger than each one could be on its own? Why not? Oh, prediction. So at some point, Dutiful is going to find out who Fitz really is, right? Somehow, by connecting with the skill or something, he's going to find out that Fitz is a farseer. Or I guess he knew that. Illegitimate birth, whatever. He has to find out at some point that Fitz is his biological father. I feel like that is a secret that just can't stay. And I think that's going to add so much tension to their relationship. And then maybe at some point they can finally get to know each other as father and son. Somehow, maybe. There's another book after this one and at least another trilogy, so it could be like 20 years later. I don't know, but I think it's going to happen at some point. And then my next prediction has to do with Chade. I should have looked at my notes more. I think Chade is going to have some kind of horrific skill accident, and I think he is probably going to lose himself to the skill. I think he is going to lose his life trying too much, trying to go too far. Whether he gets lost in the skill river or tries to use the pillars, which he seems really interested in. But if that happens, I think he will die happy knowing that he actually did have the skill. He had it within him. So at page 230, there has hardly been any of the Fool, which seems weird for a book called Golden Fool. I thought the main characters were Fitz and the Fool, and then the next book is called Fool's Fate. I feel like there should be more of him, more of that relationship there. There was finally a scene where Dutiful asks Fitz, Tom Badgerlock, what is your relationship to Lord Golden? He was very concerned. And not for no reason, besides all the gossip about two men seemingly as close as Golden and Badgerlock. The Fool did have his little incident with Civil, and so Civil kind of got to Prince Dutiful. You know Lord Golden likes boys, right? But now, you know, the gossip mill. Oh, Thick. Oh, Thick makes me so sad. People bullying him, and he's so strong and so talented. As far as in story goes, I think Chade is right that he's going to have to be taught or removed, because if he's ignored, he could become a problem, and if he's sent away, he could become a weapon used against the Farseer family. They're gonna have to make that work somehow. The one thing I kind of love about that is how Thick projects music through his skill as a person who nearly constantly has music just running through my brain. It's just always in there. If I had some kind of magical ability where I could project my thoughts out, who knows how many of my neighbors would just hear random music throughout the day. A brain that just has music playing in the background. I can relate to that. And then Fitz had to go take care of his old cottage. That was kind of sad, like the end of an era. That cottage that he had lived in for so long represented the quiet part of his life. No assassination attempts, no giving of himself for the crown. No one required anything of him. He just got to live quietly. That was like his oasis. He had his happy times with Night Eyes and Hap. That cottage was his sanctuary for the last 15 years. That's a long portion of his life. And it might have been nice to know that the cottage was just there, unbothered, as like a shrine to that time in his life. So it was a little sad to go and find it having been gone through already by his old pig-raising neighbor, and then having to go through and burn things. He considered just burning down the whole cottage, which might have made him feel better. But he left it there. The cottage was there before he found it, and so he leaves it there in case anyone else can use it, help them survive a night as they travel or whatever. And then it was funny reading about him going through his scrolls and his writings and like how cringy he felt reading some of the stuff from when he was younger, like Poetry to Molly. It felt so much like the author speaking there. Robin Hobb is a writer, and she probably had times in her life where she went back and read some of her old stuff and was like, what was I thinking? And then, as winter comes, Fitz is thinking about how back when he lived in that cottage with Hap and Night Eyes, winter coming meant preparations. They had to be ready. They worked for a long time to be ready for winter, and now it's just like winter's coming and it doesn't really mean anything. I feel like that speaks a lot to our modern life. We don't live seasonally, like if we had to garden and raise animals and really prepare for winter, and then winter was like huddle down and rest and recuperate and wait for spring when the hard work starts again. I think there's something to be said for living cyclically and seasonally. And Fitz has gone from that to city life, where the whole year can just be the same round of all the same stuff all the time. He's not as excited about parties as he used to be when he was a teenager. I thought that was funny. Me and my husband feel similarly to that now that we are in our late 30s. Parties are just noisy and busy. There's a lot more, but I don't need to talk that much about every little thing. Those are like the things that stood out to me as I was going through. So, 230 pages down, just over 400 more to go. It has been over a week since I last filmed, and in that time I have read almost 400 more pages. A lot has happened. So much so that I'm a little worried about the fact that I forgot to keep any notes is going to make me forget stuff. But the first thing I will say about some of the stuff that has happened in here so far is that I need to rescind or reevaluate some of the things that I have said about this book. At one point I have said, and I think it was in my backlog video maybe, is that because Fitz is in his mid-30s in this series, that there's less teenage angst than in the Farseer trilogy. That's not always true here, because even though Fitz is in his mid-30s, he still struggles with some of the things he always did before. But now there's 2 teenage boys. So between Hap and Prince Dutiful, there is still plenty of the teen angst going on here that we had in the first trilogy. And then the other thing I might have to rethink a little bit is how much to recommend reading the Live Ship Traders trilogy before this one. So in the first one, Fool's Errand, I would have said you don't need to read the Live Ship Traders trilogy. There's like little things that you might go, aha, I understand that reference, but it's not needed for the enjoyment of this one or to just understand the plot and what's going on. This one, events from Live Ship Traders cross over more. I don't know if it's to the extent that the Live Ship Traders is required reading for this trilogy or not. If I had not read it, I would be more confused. I would wonder, why does this person think that the Fool is named Amber? Who is Selden Vestrit and why does he matter? Is there a real dragon? None of the dragons in the Farseer trilogy were real. So when the delegation from Bingtown came, It was more interesting and more exciting because I knew who these people were and where they had come from and the stuff that they had done in the previous trilogy. I may have to finish this one and maybe even the third one before really knowing whether I can recommend skipping Life Ship Traders or saying you have to read it before this one, because it's 3 books. That's a lot to read before feeling like you're allowed to move on to another trilogy. So at this point, I still don't like Starling. Chade wants Fitz to maintain his relationship with her because of her role in local politics and stuff, her influence as a minstrel, but I still don't really like her as a person. She was still mean in the book before this one, and she still feels justified in all the stuff she said that was hurtful. She still feels justified in cheating on her husband. Like, she wants her relationship with Fitz, she says, because she still values his friendship, but it still feels very self-seeking to me. And oh man, dealing with Hap. All the things where Fitz is looking at the decisions that Hap is making and thinking, I was the same. There was nothing that the older people in his life could have told him that would have changed what he did with Molly or how he felt about her. And he remembers what it was like to be a teenager, to be in that position well enough that in dealing with Hap, he's realizing there is nothing I can say to change his mind. He feels the way he feels. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. He has to make his own mistakes and learn his own lessons. And he got to the point where he was just going to let Hap go. I was kind of disappointed that Fitz didn't fight for that relationship more. Like, all the years they had together, and now he's letting Hap's just teenage rebellion take over. He's not choosing to be the more mature person in the relationship and to love him through it all. And when Fitz is heading back up to Buckkeep after just like in his heart letting go of Hap, and Hap chases him down and says, no, we can't leave it this way. Hap is showing more maturity than Fitz, who's supposed to be the grown-up here. So while I am disappointed in Fitz, I am thankful that they still have a relationship right now. And I hope that relationship stays. And oh man, poor Hap. He was just so head over heels for Svanya. And anyone reading the book, or like in the story, anyone looking at their situation from outside could see that she was not a good person for Hap. She would have been perfectly happy if Hap ruined his apprenticeship out of love for her. That would have made her feel so good about herself, and then she still would have left him for the sailor. So good thing he stuck with the apprenticeship. Okay, all the scenes with Thick just make me want to cry. Oh my gosh. Those spots are so emotional. Especially when he's talking about his mom and how she cared for him. There are things in here that are like modern things that the world still deals with, like how people treat someone like Thick, the rumors about Tom Badgerluck and Lord Golden. And I find it interesting how Robin Hobb deals with those issues in the story. After having just read Wind and Truth, where it feels like Brandon Sanderson is inputting his own message into those issues, I don't feel like Robin Hobb does that here. I feel like she just incorporates those things into the story and tells the story as a story, and her opinion on how you should treat people different from yourselves doesn't even come in and doesn't even matter. It's just, how would the characters in the story behave? So like Fitz, the way he and Dutiful even are reacting to Thick and the type of person that Thick is really, really negative at first. And then as they start to get to know him as a person and start to realize his value, not just as a skill user, but as a person, that he's someone worth caring for, that he deserves all the things that any other person would deserve, and seeing those characters coming around to that realization on their own, not once does it ever feel preachy from the author. It just feels like a natural part of the story. Same with the relationship between the Fool and Fitz, which, oh boy, I was not actually expecting that confrontation between them. I am not surprised by anything that the Fool said to Fitz about his feelings, how he has always felt, and the actions that he would or would not have taken based on his feelings. His feelings for Fitz go very, very deep. And when he said I don't remember exactly what he said, like he would have placed no bounds on that love, not any. Like, finally, Fitz knows how the Fool feels about him in full. He kind of forced it, and Fitz does not deal with it very well. Like, I would say I didn't deal with it very well at first. I haven't gotten past any part where he starts to deal with it any better. The point I'm in, they're still very much in the midst of their not speaking to each other. The Fool is very much Lord Golden. You are my serving man. That's our relationship right now. Fitz is starting to feel regret for the way he handled how he brought things up with the Fool, but he doesn't know how to get past it. I was starting to wonder if the feathers were ever going to come up in this book. It took a long time for him to even remember that he had them. And so he wants to show them to the Fool, but he feels like he's had them for so long, and now they've been in their silent treatment of each other for so long, he's not sure how to get past that and to move on. Like, even almost dying and having the Fool help save his life and help heal him still hasn't gotten them past that yet. But we're getting closer to Fitz being willing to take a step to mend things. And since there's a whole nother trilogy after this that's like Fitz and the Fool, what's it called? The Fitz and the Fool Trilogy. Pretty sure they're gonna make up in some way, somehow. Probably by the end of this one. Speaking of the end of this one, there's still over 100 pages left, and Fitz has already had his near-death experience. So since that has already happened, I'm not sure what the big thing at the end is leading up to. I don't think we're going to get to the point where Dutiful goes on his quest yet. That seems like not enough pages for that to happen. Maybe they get ready to go, or maybe leave home and are started on that quest before the next book starts. I don't know. It's been really interesting seeing more into Chade's character. Like, Chade as a character, but also Chade and Fitz's relationship still continuing to change and grow. Just Chade being confronted over and over with all the things he never had. He has a moment, finally, where he discovers that he does have skill ability. He knew it. He knew it was in him all this time. It just took saving someone he loved from death and having other people with skill connect with him to push him through the barrier of being able to use it. Okay, so Chade does obviously love Fitz. He loves him, but that does not stop him from using Fitz as necessary. So he loves Fitz, uses Fitz, hates that he has to. I don't know if his hate is strong enough that he hates himself for doing it. And now that Fitz is a little older, Chade is deciding how much he trusts and respects Fitz as a person, as an assistant, as skill master. Because if Chade is going to be part of the coterie and Fitz is the skill master, Chade has to obey Fitz. That's going to be a challenge. Chade is very used to not having to obey anyone. He's always worked alone or directing things. He's been the string puller. He's not been used to working in a close, tight-knit group like a skill coterie is, or having someone else give him orders. In the roles that he has served, he might be told what needs to be done, but he gets to decide how to do it. And so having someone who might have to tell him what to do, who's younger than him and who he has trained and been in the position of authority to, it's not going to be easy for him. Okay, also, Fitz being a little older, I do think it's very strange still, how it seems like every woman is attracted to Fitz and wants to be with him. That's been a common theme through all these books. I don't know why women who see him are like, hey. But it seems to me that Queen Ketrikin, looking at Fitz now that he's a little older, he might be putting her more in mind of Verity at close to that age. It seems like she is seeing more of Verity in Fitz as Fitz gets a little older, and I think she's a little bit conflicted in her feelings. Fitz is her friend. That's all he is, but they share memories and experiences together that she doesn't share with anyone else. And I think to a certain degree she can just be herself more with Fitz than with anyone else, even her son, even Chade, because they have that history and because of the common person between them that they loved, that was Verity. And so when she looks at Fitz, she feels love. Not for him, for Verity, but where is that love supposed to be directed? And this is something that I'm pretty sure I know doesn't happen because of something I read online. And if you're online talking about books, don't give spoilers. But I would almost have been happy for Fitz and Kettricken to end up together at the end. If they could get past the Witted being hunted, if it was ever safe for Fitz to come out and be known as who he is. Oh, there's lots of like random plot threads. It almost feels like too many running together. The whole thing with the Piebalds and the Old Bloods, and then the Out Islander delegation and the Narcheska, and then the Bingtown traders. There's just so many little things that are somehow interconnected, and I'm not sure how it's all going to connect at the end, but you know it is. Also, it felt a little anticlimactic having Fitz confront Loudwine already, like that far before the end. I thought he was going to be a bigger problem than he ended up being. I didn't think Fitz was going to go in and kill them all. Fitz didn't think he was going to either. He also didn't know that his prince's friend was going to be there and have his life in danger, and that Dutiful would skill him and say, "Save him!" So Fitz did. There also hasn't been any mention of Laurel for a long time. She was threatened. She left. Don't know where she's at right now. The threat to Prince Dutiful of being, like, outed as having the wit doesn't seem to have been as big of a problem as they thought it was going to be. I don't know. I don't know what to expect for these last 120-ish pages. I can feel the parentheses closing. We had Loudwine and the Piebald threat, which I don't think is a parentheses completely closed, but like the main one, I think that's going to continue, but for now. But we still have others to keep closing in. The quest for the Narcheska, what's going to happen with the Bingtown traders and Chalced, who now they're like border clashing, not officially at war with. We'll see where that goes. I have a feeling that because this is a second book in a trilogy, it's the middle, and this last bit, instead of wrapping things up nicely, it's just going to open up more threads, more quests, more dangers. There's a lot still to happen, and the next book is even bigger. Golden Fool is like 703-ish pages. Fool's Fate is over 900 pages. That is quite a bit to go. I should have kept notes. I don't remember what other stuff I was going to say. Things are going to have to come to a head with Nettle. She's still skilling Fitz in his sleep, and Fitz has reached out to her a couple of times. I wasn't sure if I hoped that Fitz would reveal himself to Burek or not. It was still really emotional. Like, I knew it was going to be an emotional moment whether they met or didn't. Fitz is having a really hard time knowing that Burek feels so much guilt about not being tough enough with Fitz, about using the wit magic, and now Burek is even more determined and even more tough on his own son because he's not going to let what happened to Fitz happen to his own child. There's not much Fitz can do there without revealing himself, which would cause so many more problems. I do appreciate that Night Eyes is not forgotten. It would have been so easy with his death to just, like, forget the impact that he had had. And so I love that Fitz still thinks of him. He still expects to have those heightened senses that he had for so long. In his near-death experience, when his soul wanted to go on, he heard wolves howling and he was going to follow Night Eye's footprints. I don't like that in his hard moment, he felt like he was still having Night Eye's nightmares. So even though Night Eyes is gone, those nightmares that Night Eyes had still live on in Fitz. I'd like to think that good things that Night Eyes dreamt about also live on in Fitz. I think they do, we just don't get to be told about it by Robin Hobb, who focuses on sad things often. There's going to be a lot revealed like weird magical stuff. The Narcheska's tattoos, and then I don't remember the person's name. The person that was supposedly her maid that stayed behind. Supposedly a frozen dragon in a glacier that Dutiful has to go slay. And then the mysterious white woman who's like the white prophet, but the female counterpart to the fool that Fitz like almost remembers. There's a lot still going on, a lot that's not gonna get resolved here, and I just have to wait. All right, continuing on. Not only have I finished this, I am now almost 300 pages into Fool's Fate. Oh man, I wasn't sure that once I got to the end, I would jump right into the next book. And it's not even like it left on a cliffhanger or left any big things where I felt like I had to go on. I just was still very much in the mind space of this book. Still really happy with the reading experience I was having, and I just felt like continuing. So I am. I did write myself notes this time for that last little bit that I read. I was worried I would get confused with where this one ended and Fool's Fate starts, because I did just go straight into it. And there's a few little things that change or are revealed once you get into Fool's Fate. And I want to make sure to share my thoughts on that for videos on that book. So I thought this had a really good wrap-up conclusion. Around 100 pages before the end is when Fitz almost dies. And then he has a very long healing and convalescence, and he's still hiding away. And there was still a lot to happen. I'm probably going to go out of order on my notes. I just kind of scribbled things as I remembered. One of the things that happens in that last section is the Wit delegation, the Old Blood delegation, coming into Buckkeep Castle. That has been a long time coming. Queen Kettrikin has wanted to make sure that they felt safe and allowed to come, and they weren't going to be persecuted or in danger once they got there. She did the whole hostage thing with Prince Dutiful. He was like the only one important enough. And for the most part, the Old Blood people already know that Prince Dutiful is witted. They already know his secret. Their secret has so far been safe with them. And I feel like the whole thing with witted people being able to come and openly join the Queen's court, having it just be known that they're witted and they are accepted and protected by the crown, is setting up for later for Fitz to be able to come out of hiding, reveal that he's still alive. Everyone already knows that he's witted. There's songs about him. He's a man of legend to the Old Bloods. He could be a very important piece in getting the witted and non-witted to finally accept each other more. But up to now, it has not been safe for him to be known. Although it seems that Webb does know who he is. I really like Webb's character, and I think it's a really good time to introduce him. I will say that the character of Webb does carry over into the next book. So you're getting to know this character, and then he gets to be part of the story as it continues, which I really like. And I like that he actually seems interested in people coming together and working together and accepting each other. He's not full of thoughts of revenge, like some of the other Old Bloods who maybe sympathize with the Piebalds a little more. Speaking of the Piebalds, it still feels like they're very much just a background threat. Like, it kind of felt like they were this ominous looming thing that would have to be dealt with. And then it didn't seem like that big of a deal. Fitz went and killed a couple of them, cut off the head, metaphorically. So the Piebalds are still there. They're still in the background. I don't know how much they're going to come in to the next story. I feel like it has to be. There has to be some kind of clash still looming. The threat of Dutiful become known as witted. That has seemed like such a threat for such a long time. Either it's going to come to a head somehow, or it's just going to fizzle out because someone being witted now doesn't matter as much because we are accepting them now into Buckkeep and the Six Duchies. We'll see. I like that Dutiful finally knows who Fitz is. He doesn't know everything. Nobody does, not Chade, not Queen Kettrikin. So as far as Dutiful is concerned, he and Fitz are cousins, and Dutiful really likes that. He has felt this connection to Fitz, and now he's able to look up to Fitz more. He knows that they have stuff in common, and Dutiful is remembering all the things that he learned about Fitz from Lady Patience. He just didn't know that Fitz was Tom Badgerlock. At the time, he didn't even know Tom Badgerlock. So now that he knows that Tom is Fitz, he's like, all that stuff that Lady Patience said about Fitz is about you. I feel like that knowledge has brought the two of them closer, which is nice. And Fitz also gets to find out that he thought his father just cast him off and then didn't care anymore about him after that, but finds out that Verity and Chivalry had communicated about him. So that's not going to heal all the trauma he has been through, but I think it helps. It helps knowing that even though he kind of had to be put in the background, that he still wasn't forgotten. And with healing Fitz, Chade discovering that he has had the skill ability all along, it has finally unlocked. He can join the coterie. He can finally take his rightful magic that is his birthright. But he's old and he's hard to teach. He's far past the point in his life where he is used to being the learner. He is determined. He is ambitious. He seeks after and values power. So these are all things that are making him still pursue his skill ability, but it's hard. He's too old to become a Padawan or to be unplugged from the Matrix. There is that interesting part where the skill coterie comes together and I think it's through Thick's music, his song, that they just throw the skill out and they discover how many people out there have some skill sensitivity or even some skill ability. Chade is so excited, he calls them to him, come to Buckkeep. And they all hear Nettle answer. They don't all know who she is. Only Chade and Fitz know who she is. And only Fitz hears the dragon. This dragon who can now visit Fitz in his skill dreams. And who knows about a black dragon. And she, Tintaglia, is very insistent on knowing everything she can about this black dragon. Her life's purpose is to raise up more new dragons, and for that she is going to need a mate, and even just the breath of a hint of a possibility of there being a dragon out there has got her very interested. But she can't leave the dragons she's watching over, so she's going to have to follow Fitz through the skill, I'm assuming. I haven't gotten that far yet. The Fool finally reveals to Fitz the tattoos on his back that match Eliania's, if I'm saying that right. The Narcheska's tattoos. Very interesting twist there. So the Fool is a white prophet. The Narcheska probably is not a white prophet, but we think she's being directed by the Fool's counterpart. And dragon tattooing a child is going to have some sort of huge implication. The Fool also reveals to Fitz that their destiny is leading them toward that black dragon on an island that I'm also sure I'm going to say wrong, Osflayal something, and that at this time it is the Fool's fate, his turn to die. Fitz is not having that. He goes and betrays the Fool's secret to Chade, and they plan together to leave the Fool behind without telling him. It feels like a big betrayal. They tell themselves that they are doing it to protect him. At least that's what Fitz tells himself. Chade, not so much to protect the Fool's life as to protect their mission. Dutiful has to chop off the dragon's head and present it to the Narcheska for their treaty, for their marriage, for all that stuff to go down. And if the Fool messes that up, that's going to mess up all their plans. Fitz truly and honestly wants to protect his friend. The friend that he has betrayed, the one that he has really messed things up with. It still doesn't feel good though. I think maybe it's fair though. All this time, almost all his life, Fitz has had Chade and the Fool in his life, both who truly and deeply love him and care about him. But both Chade and the Fool, despite their love of Fitz, still use him to their own ends. And I'm going to say that the Fool probably hates himself more for using Fitz than Chade does. Chade expects Fitz to just understand this is what we do for the Farseer throne. It's nothing personal. It's just business. So back to the wit magic. Fitz, he's now broken off from Jinnah, mostly due to his wit magic. I think if he wasn't witted, Jinnah could have looked past other things. But throughout their whole friendship, and more than friendship, their adult relationship, she has always seen him through the lens of him being witted. It made him like exotic and special to her. She got to sleep with a witted man and see what it was like. And she just attributes everything he does to that. I don't know that she ever really truly sees Fitz for himself. Of course she doesn't, because she doesn't even know that he's Fitz. He's Tom Badgerlock. But that's something that she can't get past, especially after the whole killing men in town incident. Now, I do not think that Fitz believes his wit magic is the dirty, nasty thing that other people seem to think it is, but I do think his view of it has been influenced by all those feelings. He still thinks of the wit as contaminating his skill magic. He thinks of the wit magic being lesser, weaker, less useful, maybe less powerful. I'm hoping he learns some lessons otherwise. Swift is back. This is his second time showing up, except this time he has a letter from his father saying that his father has sent him away. Burrick is finally done with him. To Fitz, this feels like Burrick just giving up on Swift. Maybe Fitz blames himself a little bit because Burrick blamed himself for what he believes happened to Fitz, and he can't beat the wit out of his own son, so he sends his son off to go live his witted life or whatever. Fitz, I think, has a hard time accepting that because that goes against everything he knows about Burrick. Like, now that Burrick is getting old, he's more willing to just give up on someone he loves. Shouldn't he have loved his own son more than Fitz? Confusion. I do love that Fitz is the one chosen to work with Swift. As Chade said, Kettricken saw the symmetry in that relationship. Swift is extremely excited to embrace everything having to do with the wit, and he needs some guidance, and for some reason Fitz is not providing much guidance. He also didn't want to teach Dutiful much, and he's just kind of like eschewing his wit magic. Maybe it's the pain of having lost Night Eyes, maybe it's just that he doesn't feel like he understands it enough, he has too much to do. He's very reticent to teach wit magic, making me think of how he didn't really want to teach Chade skill magic. I don't know what his mental or emotional blocks are to teaching others what's within himself, but he's having a hard time with that. And then the ending. I am so glad that by the end, Fitz and the Fool have come together and they're both willing to try to make things up with each other. They're still not being completely open or completely honest, and their relationship is not going to be the same going forward, but they're both at least in a place where they're willing to try. Fitz still feels guilty that the Fool is unaware of the betrayal that is still coming, because by the end of this book, they haven't left yet. The trip to the Out Islands is on the way, they're getting ready, but they haven't gone, so by the end of this one, they just get to make up with each other enough that hopefully they can be on at least slightly good terms once Fitz leaves without him. So I am fully happy with this. I was so happy with it, I just went straight into the next book. I don't know that I'll film a full reading vlog for it, but I definitely want to do a full spoilery video on the third one, Fool's Fate, because there's probably going to be a lot that happens there. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys a lot. I will link my Instagram and my Patreon, and I hope whatever you're reading right now is bringing you much reading enjoyment. Happy reading. Bye.